Hello and welcome to The Good, the Bad and the Worst, a podcast where we review movie trilogies in an attempt to uncover which entry has sucked 37 dicks and which one, in the heat of the moment, goes ass to mouth. I'm your host and I'm not even supposed to be here today. And joining me,
I'm Griner. And look, there's only one return, okay? And it ain't of the king, it's of the Jedi.
And I'm Luke Morgan, and Griner, chicks dig Lord of the Rings.
Well, that worked out really well, you guys. I see you've organised that, but right on. All right, well, we're talking Clerks. It's the unprecedented Kevin Smith trilogy from the viewer Skewniverse that helped define and unlock 90s cinema. It's the second trilogy we've done on here that follows the same actors and characters over nearly 3 decades as well, which is a weird kind of hall of fame it can go in. This trilogy consists of Smith's first film, Clerks, from 1994, Clerks 2, 12 years later, in 2006, and Clerks 3, 16 years later, in 2022. I want to start, do you guys have any relationship with Kevin Smith? Like, do you guys know his work or much? I'm sure you've seen his face around. He's got a face that is everywhere in pop culture, but...
Seen him around a lot, and these movies are definitely like... what's the... I don't know. They're cult hits, obviously, so I'd heard of them in that way. They're movies I thought I should always had seen and hadn't seen, but have no real attachment to him. I remember trying to listen to... He had a podcast for a while and trying to listen to that and not enjoying it. But
not vibing. Okay. What was his podcast about?
I don't know. It was a Jay and Silent Bob podcast, and it knowing nothing about those characters or these movies, picking it up in the middle of whatever they were talking about was not that interesting to me.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So I'd never seen him in anything. I'd never watched any of these films and didn't know too much about these films. But yeah, I knew of him because he's very big in, I feel like, the nerd culture today. Talking like, he's always big on social media discussing DC, all this. I think his podcast was like the Fat Man podcast, like a play on Batman, I think, or something like that.
Okay.
And so I remember just seeing him around. I remember being online, when he had a heart attack or something like that, and that's when he started losing a bunch of weight because he was trying to prioritize his health, and he was talking about all that. So I knew of him, and I knew of Jay and Silent Bob as characters because I feel like they're quite an iconic sort of thing. But yeah, hadn't really looked into his work too much, other than a couple of movies that I have seen. But
yeah, it's interesting. He's definitely one of those kind of... He's a brand filmmaker in that you sort of know who and what he is and what he's into without necessarily having seen him. Right, Jay and Silent Bob, like there's 2 movies with them, and they are in most of his movies in some way. Like sort of his face with like the stunned expression, like wide eyes and kind of closed mouth. That just appears everywhere. It's kind of like a way to... Anytime there's like Comic-Con or big releases about superhero stuff, he's sort of there involved somehow because he's obviously a massive comic book fan. And he's done a really good job. He's interesting. He's kind of part of what I call like a 90s triumvirate. There's like 3 filmmakers, right? There's Tarantino, there's M. Night Shyamalan, and there's Kevin Smith, who kind of understand that the way to success isn't even necessarily making good movies, but it's making a brand, and it's how people will come and purchase your brand, right? Like having recognition and having something there. And Kevin Smith's really good at that, like making you sort of understand what he is and what he's selling you to such a point where even if you don't necessarily want it or like it, you kind of absorb it. And that's part of the mythos as well, like where Clerks and all these movies, it's like, oh yeah, I should see them. I've heard about them. I know that, like Ben Affleck and Matt Damon are involved in some of them. And it's like, oh, like all these actors have worked with him. He's still making movies, 30 years since his first, despite sort of doing what I assume is the same gimmick. Like he's really interesting in that way and I watched a bunch of his movies for this pod, and I was surprised how little I liked some of them. And thinking, oh, actually, maybe I'm not a Kevin Smith fan, but still being like, but there's something there, there's some appeal that I'm drawn to. And, like your favorite cigarette brand, you just can't sort of quit.
I feel like his brand that you talk about is very much of a time and of a culture that I'm not part of. Like it's very, very 90s. My impression is that it's very 90s, and it's quite entwined with stoner culture. And neither of those things I can relate to a lot. Obviously, I was alive in the 90s, but I was pretty young for most of them.
And your stoner days came much later.
My stoner days came much later. And even like
They're in the vaping.
I have more
days,
nostalgia for like the 70s and 80s because my parents showed me movies and stuff of that period. My parents weren't showing me 90s movies. Yeah, so I don't know. That's how I felt watching this trilogy, at least, and I feel like I would probably feel like that watching the rest of his filmography as well, to some degree.
Yeah, there's something interesting. I watched Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. Now, it was made in 2001, and I'd seen that when I was a kid and liked it because funny guys swore a lot, and that was good comedy when you're 6 years old or whatever. But watching it again, I was really interested. Where it's like totally a movie of that time as well. It's like it's got Sean William Scott, it's got Eliza Dushku, like it's got all the hottest people from 2001. It's literally like Jason Biggs, Sean William Scott, the guy from Dawson's Creek. Like there is just countless cameos and references to that moment in culture, and it's like, oh, this is literally like if you were alive and had your finger on any sort of cultural pulse, you would be able to get something out of this movie. And Clerks, I think, is that exact same thing. Like it's very much made for 1994. Like it's very much got a Generation X sensibility and a voice box. That's really why he, I think, succeeded. But like there's reasons why it resonates with people beyond that. We'll get into it, but I think you're right. Like his thing, all of his sensibilities and interests are of that time. And like Clerks 2 really shows that with the whole Lord of the Rings versus Star Wars debate. Is like is him pretty overtly making a statement there. But it's interesting that like he does follow just pop culture, and so some of his movies will really riff exactly what's happening at the moment. But they've usually got a sort of cynicism or a snark or a fondness of like this is this guy who was born and bred Gen X viewing something going on now, be it for good or for bad. And yeah, I don't know. Your mileage may vary on that.
Aaron,
right.
what
Yes.
had you? You're a bit of a film buff yourself, or you consider yourself one. So had you seen these movies before, the Clerks movies before, or was this your first time? Because you're also like a video store kind of guy,
Yeah, well, look, that's a good question. So Clerks obviously has a pretty special place in my heart because I think I've lived the Clerks life in a lot of ways. I have this really great memory working at Bondi Civic Video, talking with my friend Saro, and this guy comes up at like 10:30 on a Saturday night. And he's like, he's just chatting. He's like, hey, he's working here like working in Clerks. And I'm like, oh, not really. And my friend turns around, he's like, the fuck are you talking about? We've just had a 10-minute conversation about Return of the Jedi. And it was like, holy shit, we had. It wasn't the same conversation, but we had just been on this big, long philosophical tirade about that. And so this movie has a real, Clerks has a very big fondness in my heart.
I think anybody who's worked in retail has said that statement of like, this job would be all right if it weren't for the freaking customers. Like,
except for the people.
Yeah.
People always ruin it.
100%. Like, I think that's a big reason this movie so resonates and still works. I saw Clerks 2, actually, Luke, and after Jeremy East from EB recommended. He was like, if you like Clerks 1, you should see Clerks 2 as well. And then I think Clerks 3 came and went with a whisper. So, like, I knew it was coming out.
Like, very recently.
But even in my mind, I was still like, has it even come out? I was like, oh, shit, it came out 2 years ago. But, like, it came and went pretty quickly, pretty quietly. So I missed that. But yeah, the original ones definitely have a fond place, I think.
Yeah, true.
All right, let's do some stats.
Stats.
Clerks. All right, 1994, written and directed by Smith, bought and distributed by Harvey Weinstein, then at Miramax. I know there is some sort of relevance there of Weinstein's involvement in this, but maybe we'll touch on it, maybe we won't. It was made on a budget of $27,575. Ended up grossing, according to Wikipedia, $4.4 million. One quote I saw was it played on 50 screens in the US, made $3 million in the US. If that's true, that's insane. And that's not including the VHS sales and rent, which obviously in 94 was
massive.
Huge. Like one number I saw was like tens of millions. So this tiny little micro budget indie ends up, one of the big success stories in Hollywood. Yeah, we're still sort of feeling the ramifications of that. It's got a Metacritic score of 70, which is pretty good. Clerks 2, it's got a budget of $5 million, made $26.9 million, so pretty good. Produced by the Weinstein Company this time, had a Metascore of 65. Clerks 3 budget of $7 million. As far as I'm aware, most of it was self-funded. It was, and I didn't go too deep into this, but it's a bit weird how he got the money and where it sort of came from because he was trying to get funding for a long time. I only made $4.7 million. no idea what Vine. We all had to pay to rent this, so we've contributed some money to it, but
a meaningful
That's
percentage.
paid for every movie.
yeah, and like maybe it has made more. And again, maybe because it's mostly self-funded and stuff, there are some deals where it's actually profitable. I don't really know. I didn't go too deep into it, but a huge drop off from like it's made less than the original Clerks in its first running, which is I don't know, maybe says a lot.
Mm.
I don't know. Did you guys know anything about the budget of Clerks One? Like that's kind of one of those stories that has been circulated in.
Yeah, like I don't think you need to know this movie to know that number of 20, whatever it is, $27,575. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like that's kind of lives in the mythos of this movie, and anybody who knows anything about it knows it was done on a shoestring budget. They shot it in the store that he worked at night with his friends. Like that whole kit and caboodle is definitely part of the mythos of this movie, and I think, definitely knew that.
Yeah. Luke, did you know that?
I had no idea. So as Griner's saying that stuff, I'm like, oh, so all the callbacks when they're saying, oh, we'll keep the blinds, like the shutters shut so we can film it and pretend it's like daytime or nighttime in here. Obviously, it was probably an accurate thing of why it was done like that in the original. So that's really fascinating and kind of makes me.
Clerks 3 is almost entirely just like the behind the scenes and the stories of the first movie brought to life. It's very weird.
It's very self-masturbatory.
We'll get there.
Yeah, we all talk about that film a lot. All right, let's talk about the meat and the potatoes. Clerks. The day in the life of Dante, a worker at a convenience store in New Jersey, and his best friend Randall, the slacker who works at the video store next door, as they deal with customers and get into hijinks. This movie is very, very important, right? Like, I mentioned it on the top. Now, whether or not you like it or not is another conversation we will have.
Yep.
But I think regardless of honestly, if this movie vibes with you or works with you, like its significance in 90s cinema and in the indie boom, in like, I mentioned Weinstein at the top. The influence and the power that he would go on to have was like founded on steps like this, sort of seeing these upcoming filmmakers and giving them the tools, like Tarantino as well. They work together. Like this whole industry started in the 90s and then took over Hollywood for like 10, 15 years. And Clerks is honestly one of those most, like we talk about Reservoir Dogs as important movies. There's like this, this incredible voice. And like, I do think Clerks is one that at times can get missed. And I'm like, this is one of the most important ones. Like this is I don't know, like this speaks of that the whole indie sensibility of like self-knowingness, filmmakers who grew up watching movies and grew up renting movies and grew up wanting to make movies, but not really knowing necessarily how, maybe not going to film school, but a passion making something and, kind of like showing a success story, showing, hey, you don't need to go to NYU and do this. You don't need to know people in the industry. It's like Kevin Smith has a quote where he's like, it's all about making a film with your friends. And that was just it. He wanted to make a movie with friends. And like, I remember being, 15 years old and being, God, I just want to make movies with my friends. But I didn't have any friends, so I never made movies. But if I did, boy, the things that could have been.
I'm still there. I'm still wanting to do
that. 30-year-old men were still thinking one day we'll make movies with friends.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, just seeing something like that work and how a single voice can actually sort of change an industry is pretty amazing. And just, again, part of that mythos you talked about, Griner, like how everyone sort of knows this, that if you're any sort of like into film, if you're sort of interested in the industry or the history of cinema and stuff, Clerks is, in the top 10 of like, this is stuff you should know, you need to know, that changed it, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. So, we'll talk about quality, but I don't know. Do you guys disagree with me? Or?
No, totally agree. I think, I think it's innumerable the amount of people who would have been inspired to get into filmmaking from this movie, right? Like the obviously doing it on this shoestring budget, but still producing a quality product. And like, there's obvious corners cut, like total color palettes are missing, but, Kevin Smith obviously had a vision for this, and it was all about his dialogue and these conversations and how interesting they are. And he went with it. And, I think on that level, it really, really works. And obviously, I think that would be hugely inspiring to people who wanted to get into filmmaking at the time. And I think this movie, and I think part of the reason why maybe it doesn't hit as much today, is because that style of movie where it's conversation heavy, and it's people talking about pop culture. I think went on to inspire innumerable movies after it, but now I wonder how much of this movie is in the DNA of like what we're doing right now, podcasting or YouTube videos or so many other things that are just a bunch of friends talking shit about movies and about their lives, and you as someone listening to it, or as someone in the audience for that movie, kind of almost living vicariously through them, and there's that parasocial relationship with them. Like, oh, I'm the third guy in this shop just listening to this conversation, and I'm like, yeah, that's, I don't know, you know, I like Return of the King too, or whatever. You know, you're kind of taking a side, and you've got an opinion, and you feel like you're part of that conversation.
I get into these same arguments with my friends.
That's right.
This is great.
Yeah, exactly.
They're just like me.
Just like me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so true. Like, I had that same point here. I'm like, this is kind of the first podcast, right? And it's just guys, guys for the most part, talking about pop culture and interesting topics and giving anecdotes. And yeah, and this movie, it's funny, like this movie couldn't really, I don't think would be made today because it's influenced everything else. But this would be like a series of YouTube shorts.
Absolutely.
This would be something like, or, like Instagram Reels even. Like, here's a funny 30-second skit of two guys at a convenience store. And on one hand, that's because of movies like this that sort of made that. And on the other hand, it's sad to be like, oh, we'll never get a movie as singular as this again. But that's just the nature of culture and art, right? Like, it adapts it and change.
That's pop culture, and that's like social media. You know, like what's relevant to make funny jokes about or have a conversation within a video is gone in a week. You know, like 1 week, like, I need to release a video on the Hawk girl, and then it's like the next week it's another viral sensation that you need to talk about, and you know, to release something that like a movie or anything like that, 3 months down the line, by the time that movie's out, everyone's like, what are they referencing? Like, I don't even know what's going on in there anymore.
I mean, not to get ahead of ourselves, but Clerks 3 is a pretty good example of like how this doesn't really work today.
Exactly.
Like, it doesn't work as well today. It doesn't hit the same way.
Yeah.
Everything just moves so much faster, and everybody's so much more exposed. Like, there's less of a culture of everybody knows Star Wars, everybody knows Lord of the Rings. Like, people are in their own little worlds now, and they there's kind of these bubbles that everybody exists in, and there's less pop culture, I guess, that's kind of ubiquitous across huge swaths of people.
Exactly.
Yeah, the whole, like, these movies are full of things like, like I call it college philosophy or like pop culture philosophy. It's like these filled with these insights into highbrow insights into lowbrow topics. So, like the Death Star, and it's like, what's the personal politics of the people on there? It's like, are they accountable for the sins of their employers? And this is that's like an interesting idea, but explored in a very lowbrow, like college room way. And you're right. It's like those happen because, like, I remember having those, and we've all had those to some degree. But I don't know necessarily if the generations below us are going to have them in the same sense, because I don't know, it's pretty rare to ever get another Star Wars or another Lord of the Rings, a movie that everybody saw and everyone participated in. Like, I guess maybe someone will be talking about Barbie this way and being like, what's the personal politics of Barbie?
Avengers, the Marvel.
I think there was Marvel, a bit of that with Marvel, right? Like, it's much lower brow, but the idea of Ant-Man expanding inside Thanos' colon, like, that became kind of a discussion point for a while of like, why could this not work? Why could this work? Why didn't he do this? That still happens a little bit, but I do, I mean, Marvel's on the decline now too, right? Like, I feel like it's almost a generation behind what people are into now.
Yeah, that's the thing, and obviously different cinemas and different towns or whatever have different reactions. But there are even jokes in Barbie, because you mentioned Barbie. There's like a joke in Barbie that I went to 2 screenings of it in 2 different towns. One of it killed and people were laughing at it. The other one, not a peep. I was the only one that was like, and it was when she made the reference to the Snyder Cut, and it's like some people get that and they're like, that's a great. Yeah. And then my local town is just like, what the Snyder? So already movies that do that, it's I don't know.
It's hard to do. I think to this movie, to Clerks' strafe, like, it doesn't delve too deep into that, like, let's talk about the interesting, let's talk about the the ramification of, I don't know, some Ridley Scott movie in the 80s or something. They don't do obscure stuff. It's like they literally stick to Star Wars as the big
Yeah, I was actually surprised by that because like coming into this movie, I thought this movie was like it was the impression I had from it, having not watched it, was like, oh, guys stand around and talk about movies. Like I think I had seen the Star Wars scene, and I thought, oh, it's just more of that. Like it's takes on movies, and they talk about Star Wars, and I think they talk about Indiana Jones and robots or something. Like they do reference other stuff, but it's a lot raunchier than I expected, I guess. Like it's a lot more. There's a lot more talk about like hermaphrodites and all sorts of stuff. Like it really, really. And like even him talking to his girlfriend about how many dicks she's sucked and stuff like that. Like it really goes places. And I mean, obviously the final act has an act that
amazing, just amazing.
Yeah. But that's the thing that I think took me by surprise is I feel like you'll go 40 minutes and then it's like, oh yeah, there's a Star Wars reference again, and then it's like, okay, now it's a bunch of dick jokes or porn jokes and stuff like that, and it's like, okay, it kind of veers away from nerd culture in that way, I feel like. And when it comes to that nerd culture bit, it does, obviously, what we alluded to earlier, feels like it's just kind of a platform because Kevin Smith didn't have a podcast or anything like that to just tell his opinions or speak his opinion. So I think he just has characters deliver dialogue of what his thoughts are on movies or anything like that. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, let's move on. Let's talk about that a little bit, like this idea of the movie being, I guess, voices of Kevin Smith, right? Because it's originally he wrote the role of Randall and was going to cast himself in that. Obviously, it doesn't do that. He ends up casting, is it Brad O'Halloran? Have I got that mixed up?
Yeah, Brian O'Halloran.
Brian O'Halloran, sorry. No, that's John.
Jeff Anderson, yeah.
Yeah, so Jeff Anderson is Randall. He cast him in, I think, the best choice because Jeff Anderson is, I think, pretty good, at least in the first one.
I think he's probably the best actor in the first movie.
Easily. But yeah, I mean, it's like the mechanics of it, because that's, I don't know, did that grate against you guys at all? The fact that, like, I guess, did you see the Kevin Smith voice in this movie without necessarily knowing much about him? Like, did it feel artificial to be like, this is just a guy trying to voice his opinions here, or it's like, this is a bit self-indulgent, or?
And me, it did, because I feel like the acting is bad. Across the movies, it feels like stilted dialogue where it's like, okay, we're going to spend 2 minutes here and I'm going to talk about these thoughts of Star Wars, and then you argue back with what he also thinks about Lord of the Rings, and we'll do all this sort of stuff. It comes across stilted. It comes across like they in my opinion, they don't feel like friends just shooting the shit. Like they don't, to me. Like it just feels, and I feel like that comes down to acting. And some of that improves as it goes on or anything like that. But I just kept having the thought as I was watching. I was just like, man, these people can't act. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm not enjoying watching these people talk. But yeah.
I kind of agree. Like, I think the acting's pretty subpar for the most part. I actually really like Randall. I think he does a pretty good job across all the movies, particularly in the first one. I think his performance carries the acting side of it. The thing that struck me is like the conversations they're having, and they don't. While they're conversations about things like we talked about, it's about pop culture. It's about these college style conversations. They definitely talk in a way that doesn't feel natural. Like the dialogue feels written. And I think that's fine. And like, you watch Pulp Fiction and it's a similar type of thing. Like they're having these conversations and they're speaking in a prose that isn't that natural. But I think the acting there carries it further, even though that still feels like Quentin Tarantino's voice, a lot of it. But it stands out more here as this is the writer's opinion, and this is what he's trying to get across to us, I guess.
Oh, no, I fully agree. There's a really interesting thing here. I think it's part of sort of the miracle of this movie's creation is like the movie lives and dies on its dialogue, and it's so interesting because its dialogue is, like you say, it's not actually naturalistic. And again, I think my memory of this movie is always it's this really natural flow of like friends chatting, and every time like you watch it, you're like, it's not at all like their conversations are very quick paced. Like as soon as one point ends, someone responds with like a line, and you can tell these are amateur actors who have rehearsed this, and so they're just like Okay, I say this, bang, 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 bang. And as soon as the next person's like, now I say my line. They're not formally trained. There's there's some real cracks that show. Brian O'Halloran is a pretty shit. Let's not say.
Yeah.
But
We should have got John Travolta then, because obviously it works in Pulp Fiction. So
but then obviously there's the thing. So Tarantino, obviously, I think he's just a better filmmaker. There's absolutely no way you can argue against that. He's got a better ear for dialogue as well. But Kevin Smith still has an incredible ear, I think, for just for the way these conversations still flow. So even though they're not natural, they still sort of feel like they're scripted, entertaining conversations. It's like, I want to hear people talk about, why would you leave change up on the counter and let people do it? It's like, well, the fear of being watched, and that makes people be honest. That's an interesting conversation to hear. It's actually more interesting to hear it properly written and rehearsed than to hear two people when people think you're watching, they get a bit, if it was natural, it'd feel shit. It just wouldn't be fun to listen to. And so it's actually much more fun to hear it properly structured like this. And then when you take that with all the other artifices of the movie, the black and white, you don't see the cracks as much. You don't see the bad acting quite as much. You sort of look over it all as, you're aware, at least for me, you're aware you're watching a homemade film on a budget of $27,000. And so never once watching this am I like, why isn't he a better actor? Or am I like, God, why can't they just wait the half a second to respond like a normal person would? I'm like, I'm watching a guy make a movie that shouldn't be as good as this. And I think that's it's such an interesting experience every time I watch this. Because all the things are there to should make you think this is bad. It's bad acting, it's badly it's filmed with a very grainy black and white. Kevin Smith is obviously not a trained or efficient filmmaker yet. But it just works. Roger Ebert gave this a really good rating. I think 3 stars. He's he really liked this movie. And he's just it's all about the dialogue. When you have an ear for dialogue, not necessarily natural talking, but how dialogue works in movies, you can do so much. And I don't know, but you guys hadn't seen this, so did you find it more grating, I guess, or? And I'm not going to be offended if you say yes, but
we had a brief conversation before you jumped online, Conan, of we were concerned that you would revere this movie in a way that would not allow us to be honest about our feelings on it. But
I was like, oh man, I'm about to do what I did to Aliens to Grona. I was like, I don't want to do this to you, Conan. But
I fully knew coming into this as it's going to be me versus you guys, and that's fine. But here we are. Continue.
I didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy watching it.
Yeah.
I mean, spoilers, enjoy the first one the most out of them. But even that, I'm like, okay. And I guess I didn't know the backstory on it. I didn't know the budget or it was his first film or anything like that. Obviously, it should have been clear to me. I was just watching it as a film that is super popular in pop culture. I was like, oh, cool. I'm watch this movie about 2 people working in a convenience store. The synopsis of it, I'm like, oh, cool. This is right down my alley. This is going to be great. I want to hear this nerd culture talk. I want to be involved in that. But I'm not a crude humor type of person at all.
Too sophisticated.
I'm famously one of the only people that I really don't like Will Ferrell or Step Brothers and all that sort of stuff or any of them sort of movies. I'm not about that sort of humor. And so this is definitely not my type of movie in the slightest. And so all that stuff, the acting, the quick, unnatural talking and everything like that does great to me, where I was just like, I'm not enjoying watching this film. But even listening to what we've said tonight and what you guys have said about it makes me appreciate, and I could probably see it in a different light had I known that going into it. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely not as down on it as Luke. I think I respect this movie more than I like it. I appreciate. I knew the backstory of it to some degree, and I looked up a bit more of it while I was watching it. But I appreciate what he's done here, and I respect what he's done here quite a bit. I'm not going to go out of my way to watch this movie again. Probably, I guess, is where I would leave it. I think it's got some good moments, but it's also got some rough edges. A lot of rough edges. And as much as I appreciate the dialogue, because I think most of it's pretty good, there's weird choices too. What is with the interstitial title cards? I feel like they're just totally wasted and pointless in this movie. And I don't know if it's just because, it's a very vignette-y kind of movie. And I don't know if he just didn't know how to how to do that without having that break. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Because he never brings them back for any of the other movies. And like even Clerks 2 and 3, like they all kind of vignette-y in a lot of ways.
yeah, this one definitely feels has the least amount of narrative. I don't know if there's an official answer for this. But yeah, the way I always viewed it is that it's like trying to provide some structure, even if it's the illusion of structure, into a structureless movie. So every time something ends, you can at least be like, give the viewer an awareness that we're moving on to something rather than just keeping it quote unquote monotonous. But yeah, or it could just be an amateur who's just like, I love title cards. They look cool.
They're cool. It's cool for the characters. I didn't mind it for the characters. It was like, Jay and Silent Bob, and it's like, okay, they're establishing who all these people are, and that's a quick, easy way to remember everyone. So I guess probably my problem is, and like watching this as, an sophisticated adult male that, and I mean, I've been like this since I was 18. Like my idea of a great Friday night is like a cup of tea and some Vegemite toast and watching a reality TV show. I'm not like I've never been in stoner culture. I've never been like a rebel or anything like that. So to me, the characters aren't likable. Where when they're being rude to like mature people who are trying to, I'm just like, these fucking assholes. I'm just like, man, I hate people like this. I'm like, I wouldn't want to be friends with these people. And I feel like a movie like this, that's where its strength should be. Is you're like, oh man, I'd be like this with my friends. I want to hang out like with these guys, and I do not want to hang out with these guys, like in the slightest.
You don't want to hang out with Dante? I think Dante's pretty likable as a
No,
character.
he's not, man.
Really?
He's just a big sook, and just
I don't know.
Well,
like I think Randall could be very grating, but
absolutely.
But I think
I disliked him the most.
I think something this movie does, like I do kind of like the buddy aspect of this movie as like kind of the through line, I guess, is their friendship and their relationship. And I kind of like that. Yeah,
I disagree that they're unlikable. I think it's two things are happening. I think one part is like Dante especially has a real humanity. Like it's painstakingly put in there to be like, he literally has that scene at the end where he's like, I am not the kind of guy who will change to shit easy. He's literally saying, here is my personality type. I am a people pleaser. I don't disrupt the status quo. I think and straight away we see him, he's got to go and work at a job he hates because his boss says I'm out of town.
He's like, saying yes, and he's supposed to get off at 1:00 and it doesn't happen, but he's still there.
Yeah. And so I think there's so much likability and relatability there. Even more importantly is relatability. He's like, and I think there's like a sort of like a fantasy at play here where two sides of Kevin Smith are here, right? Because he worked at this quick stop in real life. So it's like, in one hand, he is Dante, like, your average sort of person in the real world who's like, is polite, pleases the customers, even when they should get up and do what Randall does, which is spit on one's face or just, goes, just ignores one. And it's like, I don't appreciate your ruse, man. Like, there is both the fantasy there of like how we want to react to customers. Yeah. And like, you should remember this at EB, right? The amount of scumbags who come in EB games and you're like, I've got to grit my teeth and just get through this conversation when what I should really do is like spray you with sanitizer.
The people that want to trade in consoles with cockroaches crawling out of them.
Yeah. And it's like,
it was always Xbox. It was always Xbox games.
Sure.
It was like the dirtiest.
But anyway, that right there is like, there's two wolves in me. There's a Dante and there's a Randall. And I think that's where so much of this works. Is like, I want to be like Randall. I want to give no shits. But I also know if I was like Randall, I'd have no friends. So seeing who I want to be, but have a friend like Dante, who's who I am, is this great, like, empathy. There's this I think it's really good at making you be like, I want to sort of hang out with these guys because I am both of these guys. Like,
yeah.
And all the side characters, and I think things like Veronica is very likable. She's just like incredibly, she's really just the best girlfriend you could hope for. She brings you lasagna at work.
But she did suck 37 dicks.
In a row?
Yeah, I actually, I quite like the characters. And you make a good point about like Randall being the fantasy. That's what you want to do to the customers. And I totally get that. And kind of and I think the third character of Jay and Silent Bob is kind of like what you want to do, right? Like you just want to be standing around smoking weed and listening to your boombox. Like, yeah,
like just all of this movie is kind of like I guess, Luke, your point about never being a rebel, right? Like this whole movie is kind of like a rebellion to that the malaise that Gen X was facing, and that every generation faces, of like since Gen X, of like, what is life when it's just working a day-to-day job, and like, is this really what we meant? Is this really what we do? We just work all day at jobs that we don't really enjoy. All of '90s movies like this, Fight Club, Matrix, etc., just like working jobs we hate to buy shit we don't need. Like, we can all relate to that in some way, and I think sort of having all of these characters that are kind of like reflections of how we approach that. Do we grin and bear it like Dante? Do we fight the system like Randall? Or do we just slack off like Jay and Silent Bob? Like, all of those are, I don't know, all of these are good reactions. Or they're all possible reactions. And I guess my other point, I think your enjoyment of this movie is directly affected to where you come at it with life, right? Like, if you see this movie when you were younger, and you haven't seen as much stuff, you haven't sort of been exposed to it. It's like the Seinfeld effect. As long as you haven't been exposed to things that were inspired by this as much, I think you get a lot more out of it. You're like, this Kevin Smith sees me.
Absolutely.
And like, Whereas if you come at this a bit later in your 30s...
I said to my wife earlier, I would have probably enjoyed this if I'd watched it for the first time when I was a teenager, or like early 20s sort of thing. And
Yeah. And I don't think that's an indictment on the movie either necessarily. Like, I think it's the way art goes. Like, when you see something that's been so important. But that's also where the mythos of this movie comes in. It's like, I think you naturally want, for me at least, like by knowing them, and you mentioned it, Grana, when you know more and read more about it, there's a lot more of that, like, oh, this is really cool what it's doing, even if I'm not necessarily enjoying it that much.
Yeah. I think the conclusion of the characters to kind of be okay with being slackers is a little bit novel for the time too. Like, I think we've come around on that, but a lot of movies of this style would have been like, oh, he gets his shit together and he goes to school or whatever it happens to be. But here he's like, this is me. I'm kind of okay with it. I have to be okay with it.
Yeah, like, you're right. I think that's, again, that indie voice speaking where you're right. Like, mainstream would have been like, yeah, I'm going to do the right thing and get a job and succeed in the system. Yep. And Ken Smith's like, no, it doesn't always work that way.
And he gets the girl at the end and they have a great happy ending. But no, instead she fucks a dead dude.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about that. Like, that's because every time the movie is constantly running that line of like grounded sort of banality of like, here's a customer coming up and complain, looking for the best date on milk.
Yeah.
But then also she fucks a dead guy because of the culmination of all these little small events that have come up. Like, did that, I don't know, what do you guys think of that? Did that throw you at all? Did it ruin it? Because I love it. I think it's the best way to like conclude the whole thing.
I thought it was pretty funny. The whole, like, her going back there and like, oh, that guy is still there with the porno mag, and I thought he was just going to harass her or something like that. I was not expecting him to be dead and her to have sex with him. It definitely surprised me, and it kind of in some ways like crosses a line a little bit, which is like it's like, I don't know, I'm okay with necrophilia, don't get me wrong, but like, it is a bit taboo, right? Like, I guess that's that indie voice again, right? Like, he's okay with making a joke about it.
Yeah, and just being so sort of like okay with it, because they just sort of talk about it up there, like, oh yeah, I was like, I forgot he was in there. It's like, yeah, gave him the porno mag, and they're like, will she be okay? So no, she'll need years of therapy. And they just kind of go about
years of therapy. Yeah.
And they just go on about their day then. And it's like, this is like a monumental thing, but it's just a day in the life of a quick stop employee. Like, the way it handles something so outlandish, I think, is really clever. I don't know. Were there any other scenes or like quotes specifically that you guys really liked?
I enjoyed the dude at the start, the gum salesman that's talking everyone out of buying the smoke. Like, I enjoyed him and his whole thing, and I was just like, but after like the second person, I was like, this guy's gonna be a gum salesman, isn't he? I was like, I just feel this is where it's going, and I thought it was funny. Like, then there's this whole crowd there, and they're all throwing their cigarettes at him and blaming him and calling him a cancer merchant.
I think we've mentioned most of the other good ones, the Star Wars moment, and Randall calling that woman out on her ruse is pretty good.
Yeah. Some of Jay and Silent Bob's lines are great. That's like, he's always like, "What's up, ladies? What's up, sluts?"
Yeah.
I don't know, it just tickles me.
That's like his first line in the movie too.
It's just a great way to introduce them. One of them comes in, he's like, "Stop dealing," and they're like, "I'm not dealing." And the guy comes up, he's like, "You go hold?" He's like, "Yeah, what you want? What you want?" Just
I like Jay and Silent Bob. They're the ones I like from these movies,
Mm.
and I do like even when Silent Bob finally talks and he's like super serious and has something profound to say as well.
Yeah.
I enjoy that aspect. But this is how little I knew about these films. For years, when I've heard about Clerks and everything like that, I assumed the two main characters were Jay and Silent Bob. Like I didn't know there were others than them. So as soon as I started watching this, I was like, okay, wait, what? Who's this dude? Like, so yeah, it was
Yeah.
unexpected.
No, well, they become kind of this. They literally become the central point of the viewer's universe. Like,
Mm.
there's two Jay and Silent Bob movies. There's Strikes Back and there's Reboot. They're in pretty much every other. Like, they're in Mallrats. They're in Chasing Amy. They're in.
Yeah.
Pretty sure they're in
Dogma?
Dogma.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, and like, so all the ones that are sort of in that universe, they are very much like kind of
The
like I watched
constant.
Mallrats for the first time. Yeah, they're the constant. Like they're the ones who will
The
lead
anchor
the same
bangs.
They really are.
Exactly.
And they've got pivotal roles. Like in Mallrats, his next film, they play a huge role. Like they're
Yeah.
essential to the plot. They make everything sort of change and happen. It's kind of weird how essential they become, which I don't know,
And, like,
maybe says more about Kevin Smith and his ego. I don't know.
And even my wife, like, she loves 90s movies and stuff like that. She had never seen these movies. And
Yeah,
I was like,
right.
oh, so do you know about these movies? And she's like, no, not really. And then I was like, it's got Jane Silent Bob. And she's like, oh, yeah, Jane Silent Bob. And she's like, I know them. She's like, okay,
Yeah.
so that's where they're from. Okay. So, yeah, I think they're bigger than these movies, really.
Yeah, I think without a doubt. All right, well then, look, with that, do you guys have anything else to say, or should we do the Clerks 2?
Let's do it.
Cool. All right, Clerks 2. After the quick stop burns down, Dante and Randall find themselves working at an anonymous fast food chain, Moobies, where they continue to deal with the inertia and mundanity of working life. Just want to let you know, I wrote all the synopses of these movies from my own brain. So that's
With
why I
AI,
said
did you use AI?
that's a night. Yeah, they would have never used AI in the 90s.
Mm.
Bring back the 90s, son. All right, so yeah, 12 years since the original. Long time for a sequel. Sequel that doesn't need to exist. No one really asked for.
Fucking A.
Wow. All right. Yeah. So,
All right.
like, not a fan, huh?
I hate this movie.
Wow.
Like,
Wow.
this is one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life, where it just like my problems with the first one of not finding the characters likable. Now these dudes are my age, they're in their 30s and are still fuck ups and still acting like this. To the point where I'm
Just
like,
like you.
no, I got my shit together. So I'm just like, it was more grating for me. And as the movie goes on, it just gets worse and worse. And then everything with the animal, I was like, what the
The
fuck
donkey
am
show.
I watching? The donkey show. I was like, and it goes for so long, and it's just I was just like, this is disturbing. Like this I don't know if this is their version of the dead guy from the first one where they're like, oh, we're going over the
Absolutely,
line.
that's what it is.
But
Yeah,
they're not
yeah.
just treading the line. They're like, hey, let's just do this stuff that's just really fucking gross and do it for a long time. Like, you wouldn't want to watch this film with your parents or anything like that. But just seeing that, I was so bored. I was so bored. I was just like, I'm not interested in this movie at all.
Really?
What happens to these characters or anything? I was just like, yeah. I liked the new dude because he's a Lord of the Rings fan. I liked
Yeah, so that's where this comes from. So I think what happened was as soon as they get to the point where Randall shits on Lord of the Rings, you're like, bad movie. Don't watch.
So this is
0 out of 10.
That is actually so all I had seen of these movies before watching these movies. I'd seen that on like just Facebook, a
Yeah.
video that popped up of like this scene, and it was like starting with that. So I'd seen that whole scene before. And so I kind of always had this thing against Clerks. I was like, I look at them shitting on Lord of the Rings, like this fucking dude. I've heard these arguments, and I was just like, but that's not the reason I hate this film so much. But it's just, I can respect the first one. This one, I'm just like, it's just a shitty, lame ass attempt to try and come back into, out of obscurity. And it's just, I don't know, it does a disservice. Does a disservice to the Clerk's name.
Wow, strong words. To a name that you don't care about either, which is interesting.
No, but I feel like Clerks would have a better place in cinema if Clerks 2 hadn't come along and done what it did.
Grano, what did you think?
Yeah, I don't know how to feel about this movie. I definitely didn't hate it as much as Luke. That's for sure. it's an interesting experiment in like doing a follow up to a really low budget movie to now having a budget, and you're like mixing good actors like Rosario Dawson with Dante, and like like she carries her shit and she's really good and really likable and really charming, and like why the hell are you not picking her from the start? But
and a smoke show,
yeah, absolutely.
Crazy.
It's interesting, like seeing her interact with them, and I think that, like, I actually don't mind that. Like, I don't mind his relationship with her and him choosing her in the end. I think the pop culture references there's more of them, and I think they're better here. Like, obviously, the Lord of the Rings one is the big one that comes up.
Well, Transformers is the other one. Right?
Transformers is the other one, yes, absolutely. And like just even making jokes about having it the best online handle, and maybe I can relate to this time period a bit better too. Probably is part of why I appreciate it a bit more. I've worked in fast food, and I totally feel how they're feeling. I don't know. This movie kind of worked for me. Do I think it's as good as the first one? Not really.
Kind of okay with necrophilia and alright with bestiality.
Look, there's a line somewhere, and it's not necrophilia and bestiality. We'll find it one day, guys. Don't worry.
It's both. You can't do a dead animal. That's off the table.
That's right.
No, that's the line. That's the line.
Yeah, come on. We have decency
there.
here. Jeez.
There's even the other thing is like they have this very they introduce the new character. What's his name?
The weenie. Sorry, I always forget his name. I'm looking it up right now.
Elias?
Yes, Elias, yeah.
Elias, and he's a Christian virgin, and obviously they take the absolute shit out of him, but I can still kind of relate to his character and he's trying to fit in with these guys, coming from like a really sheltered background, obviously. And like, I kind of relate to that too.
I like him.
That's interesting because Elias is the one part of this movie that I think doesn't really work. Like his role is necessary, and what the character is supposed to do is fine, is good. Like you say, he's meant to be the one who's sort of he's like the shitting board for them all.
Yeah, but
he's meant to sort of then foil Randall now, where Randall was the foil to Dante in the first. Yeah. But I think his character is really just weird and kind of shit. Like I don't know, nothing that Elias really does or says in this is funny in my mind.
What about Pillow Pants? You didn't enjoy Pillow Pants?
I think it's just his acting. The guy, Trevor Furman. So I don't know if it's his acting or if it's the direction or what. But really, none of his stuff works. Like none of his deliveries, none of his characterizations, his little things. I found all those really frustrating. I'm like, this character doesn't work at all. But you need that person, so you need someone there. But then on the other side of it, like say, is Rosario Dawson, who's just incredible. Like she's the best actor in this by a mile.
Mm-hmm.
Has some really good character, like sort of knows what she's doing. Is just really charming, really likable. Stretches the sort of the believability with why she'd be into Dante in the first place, but she pulls it off with enough authenticity that you're like, maybe she's just a bit of a, I don't know. She's a bit crazy. Yeah, she sees something in this like 30-year-old bum.
I mean, I think there's a problem with both the first two movies of Dante being able to pick up oodles of chicks because that's not believable to me. I'm sorry.
No, I agree. It's I'm not saying it at all, but it's just you got to suspend it to reality doesn't really work in a Clerks movie. Like
sure,
dead people don't get fucked in convenience stores and dead. But yeah, okay. That's what about all the other cameos? I guess like you get Jason Lee come up in one part.
You get two of the guys from My Name Is Earl. You get the other guy, Ethan.
Yeah, Ethan Suplee.
Yeah, Ben Affleck turns out, obviously.
Yeah, because this is the first one where you start to see like the broader universe, exactly. Because Ben Affleck's in most of them. Like Jason Lee's in 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Did they work for you? Like, if you guys hadn't seen the others, especially, were you just like, why the hell are they here? Or were you? What are they? I don't know. How did it work for you?
It was fine. They just seemed like cameos to me. Like it felt like a symptom of its bigger budget, to be honest.
He didn't know how to spend the money. It's like
no,
500,000 somewhere.
I guess the two dudes from My Name Is Earl.
Been big. No, I mean, as in like I guess the fact that Kevin Smith is kind of a thing now, right? Like he can kind of pull these names in. And then I did see later on that Ben Affleck was actually in Chasing Amy and has a relationship there, obviously. So.
Yeah, like literally Mallrats chasing Amy, Dogma, Jay and Silent Bob, Clerks too. So I think he's in all of his movies up until Jersey Girl, of course. Yeah, like him and Ben Affleck are super tight. It
Best
seems.
buds.
Apparently, don't know how Matt Damon feels about that, but that's neither here nor there.
How do you like them apples, Matt Damon?
You guys should watch Jay and Silent Bob. It's a really funny like part where they're making Goodwill Hunting 2. It's yeah, a lot of good lines.
No joke. I'd be interested in watching that because I don't mind them as characters. And I looked at them because I was like, I thought that they had movies, and then when I looked it up this afternoon, I was like, okay, yeah, no, there are 2 movies, and they seem all right reviewed, like in the 60s and 70% on Rotten Tomatoes, I think.
A lot of the first one doesn't work, but there are some jokes in the first one that are great. But it's got a lot of Will Ferrell in Jay and Silent Bob, so maybe you won't have a look.
No Will Ferrell. But yeah, this movie, I'm sorry, just did not work for me. I just did not enjoy this.
So, is it?
What's your opinion on it first?
Well, okay.
Like when you watched this for the first time?
So the first time I saw it, I was like, "This is kind of like I said at the top, like this is a bit of an unnecessary sequel." I didn't really know if it. I knew it'd feel a bit cash grabby in my mind, and I enjoyed it. Obviously, I didn't hold a candle to the first one. Watching it again the second time, though, I enjoyed it a lot more. And I think it's one of those rare instances where I actually think this is a sequel that took a while to come around, but works because I think Kevin Smith, for whatever reason, I think he had a little bit more to say. Like all of Kevin Smith's movies, right, are a reflection of him at his point in life. Like Chasing Amy is him trying to pursue love and all the scariness of like pursuing a relationship before he married his wife. Jersey Girl is about him coming to terms with fatherhood and like coming around from being afraid to coming to love it. Like Dogma is him trying to figure out his Catholicism. Like he's basically every movie he makes is just here's the shit going on in my life. I want to talk about it. And this movie's like got a real. It both reflects his growth as a filmmaker. There's a lot more visual comedy here that's interesting. There's a lot more just I don't know good angles and good film like basic good filmmaking stuff. Again, acting's all a bit better. Like even Dante and Randall are acting stronger than they were in the first. But I think as well, like this movie's got really like just got a huge heart. Like it doesn't repeat all the same things as the first one of just being like, let's just have these dudes talk shit and weird, funny instances. It's actually following a story of like these 2 guys who are kind of trying to figure out their future now. And like you said, Luke, they're in their 30s. They can't just keep doing this forever. And so Dante's literally sort of having this crisis of like, shit, what do I do here? And so I think it could have been a really bad sequel if it was just let's do Clerks 1, but all their jokes are like, oh, we're getting too old for this shit. But instead, it's like, Randall's happy to just keep doing what he's doing. But Dante is like, no, I've got to do something, but he's also Dante. And so I think there's a lot of really good character work here where he is stuck in that. Having a love triangle is genuinely like, do I want to pursue the life that I was expected to pursue? Or do I follow a life of potential happiness? And then the whole big showdown in the jail where Randall's basically like, I need you, like, you're my best friend and I can't live without my best friend. That line where he says, I get to come to work with my best friend every day, like, that's the best thing I could ever want. Like, there's something really powerful there of just like that's a really good feeling. Like, yeah, if you go to work with your best friend every day, your job can be shit, the rest of your life can be shit. But that's really nice. And there's a genuine heart and authenticity here that I think Smith's kind of reflecting a bit more on that and being like, it isn't just look at me as a filmmaker. He's like, no, he actually has something sort of to say about these characters and about friendship and relationships. And so I think it's a mature sequel that captures a lot of the same magic without trying to retread too much. Even if the Donkey Show doesn't necessarily work and Alias doesn't work in my mind.
Do you think it works, or am I like?
I thought the Donkey Show was kind of funny. I thought it was kind of funny. Is it as good as the first one? No. Does it show too much? Probably.
Yeah.
Should I be about bestiality? Probably not.
But I am. But
here we are. No.
Yeah. But it's. What did you guys think about all the long talk about? I don't even know if I can say it or not. Porch Monkey.
Oh no.
This.
Yeah,
we can come back to her big.
Nah, wasn't a fan of that, and I don't know. Was telling that he didn't try to broach that scene again in the third one. Yeah, unnecessary. Probably is the word.
Yeah,
and offensive. I think honestly. kind
Yes.
of.
A lot of this stuff obviously doesn't hold up in today's day and age.
I don't know that it held up in 2006,
and
though,
it didn't
right?
really hold up then. And I feel like it's a lot of the stuff that they spoke about in this as well. It's just also, I don't know, having the movie start with like this big print of like Harvey Weinstein also just has like this thing where it's like,
I mean,
okay, this is
that's
okay. I'm
dozens of
kind of
films.
expecting this movie. Yeah, but you can kind of feel his sweaty prints all over this film. I don't know. But
This movie also fits squarely in that timeline where like homophobia was funny, and you do notice that quite a bit too.
Yeah, so quickly on Weinstein, I mean, I actually don't know too much about, but apparently I think him and Smith weren't on great terms. Like, apparently there was issues with Weinstein not paying Smith for the first Clerks. So I don't actually know too much about it, but I don't think this is like, Tarantino was really close with Weinstein, and if there's anyone who sort of could be quote unquote interrogated about that, it would be him. I don't know if Smith was really that buddy with him, but anyway. But you're right, this movie is definitely part of that, like, it's very 2006 because there is a lot of gay jokes and there is a lot of that whole big racist conversation of like where he's dropping the N word and they just go back and forth. It's like, it's interesting because like it's clearly this is a character who's kind of unlikable, saying he's like, this isn't a slur. My grandma used to call me, oh wait, maybe she was racist.
Yeah.
And all the other characters like, you can't say that. And it is funny because like that's how we would talk about it. But even in today, you couldn't even have this scene because having a white person say that slur is so heinous. And I'm like,
I think if he had stuck to just that initial slur, which I hadn't even ever heard before,
it's very, very American.
Very American, it feels like, and then coming to the realization that his grandma was racist. Like, I think that little arc is okay.
He paints it on the back of his shirt.
There's that, and then he also lists like 15 other slurs for every other race that he can think of, and that probably pushes it too far.
Yeah, but it's in line with the transgressiveness of these movies, right? Trying to push the envelope a little bit, trying to be like, maybe we're not supposed to talk about this, but the gay jokes are ones like, because again, in all of his other movies, there's a lot of gay jokes, and that,
Frodo and Sam aren't gay.
Well, but they might be a little bit gay. Have you seen that ending scene where they're all jumping on the bed?
Yeah, I watched it, the extended edition in the cinema like 2 weeks ago. It's fantastic.
It's 40 minutes long, that one scene. But that, like, yeah, that's the stuff more that is like, this is a product of its time where gay jokes were funny and everybody was using them, and that's aged a lot worse, yeah. But I don't know. I just have a few other scenes to mention. I don't know. I don't have that much to talk about in terms of cultural impact of this movie because I don't think it really had much of a cultural impact.
No, I agree.
Very much a movie that is like, if fans of the first one, I think, got a lot out of this because they're like, I like these characters, I like this sensibility. Yeah. No other big thoughts, Luke? I know you hated it that much. Like
that dance scene was entirely unnecessary, and I had to fast forward it because it annoyed me.
Okay, it didn't work for you.
With Jay,
I don't know. There was a big dance number
No, it's when they're doing
roof.
ABC.
Oh yeah,
and everyone's dancing along to it.
Yeah.
I don't know, but again, Rosario Dawson is just like so charming in that scene. You just kind of like, it is really silly, but I don't know, I was caught up with it. I think, look, I really like scenes I want to mention. Jay getting hit by the door when they walk out, and he's like pissing, and the door hits him. He's just like, "What the fuck?" And I really I lost my shit at that part.
I just like the door making that noise every time they open it.
Yeah, movies is a good setting. Having a montage to 1979 by Smashing Pumpkins is, you honestly can't get better. Well, you can. You get better in the third movie, which we'll talk about. But good choice.
I liked the transition from black and white to colour with the burning down of the quick stop. I thought that was well done. It was pretty funny.
Yeah.
I like that.
That was good in knowing. I agree. Little girl in the window who waves at Dante. That's a young Harley Quinn Smith, Kevin Smith's daughter. She's just adorable in that scene.
Name's Harley Quinn. Interesting.
Yes, big comic book.
He's a big DC
No, I mean, I know, I can tell.
Yeah, he's literally called his daughter Harley Quinn Smith. So make of that what you will. All right, let's move on to Clerks 3. I think we're probably taking up too much time. After Randall has a heart attack, he decides to make a movie about his life working at the Quick Stop. My first note: fucking MCR. It starts with the Black Parade.
Dude, as soon as it started, I was like, "Oh man, this can't be so into this shit."
I was just like, 10 out of 10.
So was I. I was like, this is. I was like, automatically, this is better than the last two.
I went to Letterboxd, said 5 out of 5 stars. Said, sir, thank you.
It's an effective song choice to start the movie.
It is, right?
So, a few thoughts on this movie. I feel like I was wanting Randall to die a lot when he first started having the heart attack.
Wow.
I was like, yes. I was like, please die. I was like, I might enjoy this movie a bit more. And then he doesn't. The other fucking dude dies, Dante. But this movie, if you obviously watched Clerks when you were young, and then you watched the second one when you were having a midlife crisis, and then you're watching this one as like an old man that's ready to die, and probably not, healthy.
They're like 45. Calm down.
Like 10 years old than me.
Yeah, but you're a lot older than us, Griner.
So much older.
We're young studs.
So much older than you.
Geriatric Griner.
But like, yeah, I feel like this movie pays a tribute a lot to if you're a fan of it, and you'd probably get emotional at the ending or whatever. But the movie comes across very wanky and self-masturbatory. Like, it's very much like, let's just make a movie talking about how good our movies are and all the stuff that we did to make our movies. And as a film, I feel like it doesn't really work, and that's probably why it bombed at the box office and lost millions of dollars.
Yeah, I mean, it is very up its own ass. It holds the original Clerks in with a huge amount of reverence, and possibly deservedly so to some degree. But I don't know. It's almost a hard movie to rate because I'm just not like. There's obvious. I wonder. Is there an audience for it actually? Like, I feel like the audience, you're right, Luke, is someone who really loved the original Clerks and is now in their mid-40s and is pining to go back to those times a bit. Maybe, I don't know.
Conan, do you know any big fans of Clerks that would have enjoyed this one?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned before, I worked with a guy back at a pizza place. He was a huge Clerks fan. Rav, this is for you, R.I.P. He's not dead, but
he will be after he hears us shitting on these.
Yeah, probably probably have a heart attack.
Yeah.
And he's seen Clerks 3, if I remember correctly. I could be remembering it wrong. But he was definitely a big fan of just the first one. Like, the first one is one that holds a special place, I think, in his, I think it was his favorite movie. And I don't know, I can't actually remember his thoughts on Clerks 3. I'll have to ask him after this. But I don't know anyone else in the world who saw this or wanted this. Like, I actually don't know that many people who have seen Clerks and hold it in high esteem. It's one of those ones that a lot of people on the internet do. And a lot of people, like, in film circles have seen it. Like, a couple of guys I work at the video store liked it, but that was years ago.
Probably a lot of filmmakers that probably got into filming when they watch people do this and be like, I could do that too.
For sure, yeah. But you're right, I think the people who do, like, honestly, the people who really like it probably would have wanted to just watch this at home. And I think they were like, shit, I've got to get out to the movies and watch Clerks 3 with the boys.
On a big screen. I need to see it.
Yeah. Like, these movies have a real, like, sort of analog charm of, like, watching these on a DVD or like a VHS is kind of the way feel like it's meant to be seen, right?
Yeah.
So, like, part of it feels like Clerks 3 should be seen quietly and intimately with you reflecting on Clerks 1, which is the big problem with the movie. Like, it's constantly reminding you of how good or how important or how significant Clerks 1 was. And in that pursuit, it never once sort of makes a good movie.
Exactly. It's literally like, let's film us doing the scenes again that we did in the first one 30 years ago. Maybe because we're a little bit better at acting now that we can do it.
But even then, right, some of the acting in this feels so much worse. Like,
yeah,
I mentioned how the black and white in the first makes you see, like, makes you forget a lot of the things. But in this one, because it is like, it's pristine, it is high def. You can see everyone's wrinkles and blemishes. But, like, I just noticed so much, like, Randall has one thing. Like, he'll sort of jerk his head back and look to the side. Kevin Smith is constantly rolling his eyes really obnoxiously. Dante's got really stilted delivery. And I'm like, I don't know if they've all gotten worse at acting or if it's just because I can see everything they're doing. But
probably
everyone's
only acted 3 times in the last.
I was going to say,
years.
It's hard when you only act 3 times in 40 years.
Like, yes, another acting gig. Clerks is coming back. I can act again.
Honestly, that could be a big part of it, I think. Like, I don't know, the acting in this one I thought was so much worse. And I was like, I don't think that's an intentional choice. I genuinely just think they're all They're probably just all older and like the story behind this movie is.
There's the scene where
Yep.
Dante goes off at Randall right before he, and I was like, shit, some good acting. I was like, what? Where
So
did this come from? And
those are those emotional scenes. That scene and the one where he's at the cemetery talking to
Mm.
Rosario Dawson, they're
Yep.
good. He's really good in that. But like the scene where he's talking to Veronica in the car and he's like, "You don't look a day over 37." It's like, God, that's not even like cute sort of wink wink. Like this is just really, I
it's
don't know.
like you're watching a
bad.
fan made like behind the scenes thing of like, oh, look at us redoing all this old stuff in the old
Mm.
set we used to do.
Mm.
Like it as a movie, it's like, man, this is egregious to feel like you could release this in the cinemas and try and make millions of dollars off it. So but is this the one you said was self-funded? Like he got funding for it because he just really wanted to fucking put his name out there and be like, look, everyone, I should be more famous. Like,
So, like this movie's had a weird, tumultuous sort of creation, right? Like he started writing it, I think, years before this. Apparently, the first version of the script was so bad that Randall, Jeff Anderson, refused to do it. He wasn't going to do it. Kevin Smith then has a heart attack in 2018 and rewrites the script to what it is now, and that's when Jeff Anderson then says, "Okay, I'll be in it because it's a bit better." So I don't know. Like, this isn't a cash grab in terms of someone offered him money or anything. It seems like he wanted to make some movie. It was so bad that he then had to rework it because he had a near-death experience and was like, "I've got to." I don't know. I guess again, talking about the Kevin Smithness, he was reflecting on his own life and like, what is my life but the legacy of Clerks? And so he's like, let's make a movie about that. And I really don't know why exactly because it doesn't seem like he really has anything meaningful to say with it. And I didn't go too deep into the money. I think though he was trying to get funding for this. Like this wasn't funded by any big group. It was distributed by Lionsgate, who distribute all the small things. They distributed The Crow this year. Like they have some problems.
they won't be making movies much longer.
Like it's one of those ones. They distribute just a lot of the small things that no one else will. So I think he got a lot of his money from like small micro investors and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know. It's just this feels kind of like a passion project, but I don't feel any passion in it.
Yeah, it feels like him. I don't know. I don't know if it's him like coming to terms with his legacy in some ways. This is not long after he had a heart attack, and like he's obviously trying to face his own mortality a bit. I think in this because there's 2 heart attacks in this movie. But it still doesn't necessarily make a great movie. I actually don't mind the Jay and Silent Bob stuff in this movie. I actually quite like them running that video store as a dispensary and then still dealing out the front of it and stuff. Like,
it's
some of that's
in the
pretty
90s,
funny.
Speakers not looking over a day over 37. Jay hasn't aged. Jay still looks the same. And even Kevin Smith a little.
Kevin Smith's probably aged the best of all of them, to be honest.
Yeah.
He's looking so trim now, but
it is funny seeing some of them all come in like, God, time has been cruel to you.
Yeah.
It was kind of impressive they got all the original people back as well, like the actresses and the people that don't seem like actors or actresses and have had big careers after. Maybe they have, but obviously they're not like names, like to see all these people pop. Even like the high school dude that's talking to him at the end about like who he used to date and stuff like that. I'm like,
the jock.
God, they brought all these people back. Like, what the heck?
Yeah, and it's that cool thing where they spend there's a charm to it that's like this is Kevin Smith wanting to hang out with his friends and make a movie with his friends, and he's literally giving all these people like, hey, you all had some sort of career or a chance at a career because of me, and I just want to sort of celebrate our work together. And there's like a little bit I saw it behind the scenes where he's giving on day one of shooting, he's talking, and he's very like this isn't my movie, this is our movie. He's like, if you have an idea or a suggestion, bring it up to me. He's like, I'm not precious. Like he seems like the kind of guy who is very much like, let's have fun. He's not like, I need to tell my story, and it's like, your story sucks, dude. He's more just like, no, I want to sort of make a movie, and he's made a whole career of making movies about nothing, and this movie is kind of a movie about nothing, and so it feels like there's probably more joy on the set than there is at the end.
Yeah,
and so that's like that's kind of the one thing you're supposed to do when you make a movie is make a good movie. He doesn't make a good movie here. There is still some charm in just being like, oh yeah, it's that guy, or Veronica's back, or You even got Rosario Dawson back.
Yeah. Or even seeing
killed her off at the
him,
start.
seeing him like justify the black and white, in a way that's not true. Like supposedly it was entirely budget, but he's like, oh, the colors won't pop properly. So if I'm going to film this, I'm going to film it in black and white. Like,
yeah. That whole thing is like, and having it in black and white makes the audience think they're looking through an unseen security camera. It's like, no, it's fun. Like that's what people have read into this. That's cool.
yeah, he's just gone to the internet and looked up all the theories behind it, and now he's reading them out.
Yeah.
But I like stuff like that's kind of fun. But yeah, it's very self indulgent, and the end result is not that much fun.
Yeah. I honestly,
I was just gonna say, like, pretty much everything with the guy that came in the second one, whatever his name is, the Elias.
Elias.
Pretty much nothing with him worked for me, really. Like, the whole crypto thing felt so aged already, and this movie's only 2 years old.
As soon as they said NFTs, I was like, oh, no, here we go.
Yeah.
And they're like, what's NFTs? I'm just like, oh, my God.
And Randall keeps making jokes about Gen Z, and, like, Elias is very much not Gen Z. Like, he's clearly millennial. Like, it's just... I'm not sure what he's going for there, and it just felt like it aged this movie so hard in just 2 years.
Yeah, completely agree. That whole thing where he's got his weird offsider, because that guy Austin Zajur, I think he got it because he was dating Harley Quinn at the time. I don't know if he's still dating her, but
Not the character, Kevin Smith's daughter.
Could be, but maybe he's Joker. I don't know. No, so he was dating Kevin Smith's daughter. And so Kevin Smith wrote this part for him. And it's one of those weird things where I'm like, this was a very bad choice because their whole, like, he just follows Elias around for no apparent reason. Yeah. Literally does nothing. Yeah, brings nothing to the table. I agree. Their whole just randomly being like, I now worship Satan was really like, what? I don't know. It seemed like weird gags that never paid off. It would have been fun. Like, they would have been funny if every time he's seen, he's getting a little bit more extreme, and by the end, he's gone full like crow face paint, but I don't know. They just straight away just like, let's put him in a
weird costume.
Yeah, but they just don't kind of do that. It's weird choices. The other big issue is like that whole casting choice, right? Well, not casting choice. The choice of making Randall the protagonist in this is really just like wacky. Because obviously Dante's the lead in the first two. It's like always been Dante's story. And then making this movie like follows Randall and he's the one who's had the change I don't know, it's bizarre to me. Especially because, like, why not just make Dante have the heart attack? Dante makes the film. I don't know.
I think under the lens of, like, Kevin Smith wrote Randall as him in the first movie to then have him turn around and make the movie. And then it also is kind of a nice, heartfelt moment at the end where he's showing him the movie and he's like, I realised I had to make it your movie. Yeah. Kinda, I don't know. That's kind of a nice moment, but it feels like, I don't know.
It is, but I'm like, when I'm watching it, of course it's his movie. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
It's a weird, like, that's one of the missteps. So I'm like, these movies are so self-aware and so knowing about what they are. To have that line, it is emotional for the characters. But for the audience, I'm like, yes, when was it ever up for dispute that this was Randall was the lead? Yeah. This was always about Dante. It's really weird for him to be like, no, it was you, Dante. It's like, yes. It would have been, I think, more powerful if Dante was like, you're the magic. You're the reason for all this. Because, like, then it was like, Randall's the one we remember and we quote a bit more. He's the one who's the comedic relief, but who makes more of an impression. I don't know. The whole movie just feels so strangely constructed and so, yeah. It's, I don't know.
I like that they showed the hockey on the rooftop, but the angle this time makes you realize that, like, that space is way too small to be playing hockey. Like, you can barely fit 5 guys. I mean,
a bunch of dudes stand up.
The way it's shot in the first one, you don't really, like, they're obviously mindful of that and that you don't really see it. But now there's like 10 dudes standing on top of each other trying to play hockey in this tiny little space. It's just, I don't know, made me laugh.
Good visual comedy, yeah. But there are some funny moments, like the whole thing, something like that. Them filming their stuff with Jay, because again, that was all like I mentioned, all the stuff here is like real stories from the making of the first one. So Jay being bad at his lines, Jay not dancing when they're supposed to do his take. Like, that was apparently true. Jason Mewes was just really was really shy. He didn't know what to do. He couldn't do it. Like,
That's the thing. All of that stuff, I feel like, makes those scenes fun if you know that stuff. Like this movie is like purely for diehard Clerks enthusiasts that listen to the audio commentaries and stuff like that.
yeah,
You know, like the stuff. I mean, the stuff with Jay works still, where he does these lines really dramatically, and
yeah.
it's just like, well, no, that's not really the direction we're going for, and
Mm.
that's humorous, but yeah, I don't. It's odd.
Yeah, there's the one where as well, where, like they're filming this, they're about to film the scene where Dante gets shot, and he's like, "Whoa, what's happening here?" And I was like, "Oh, we need something to spice it up." So that was the alternate ending or the original ending of the first movie. Randall was going to get shot. Sorry, no, Dante was going to get shot in the original. Like that's you can find it on YouTube. It's on the DVD. He just gets killed, and it's meant to be this, a downer ending, like Empire Strikes Back, where on the day he's not supposed to be there, he gets killed.
I was gonna say, is he like bleeding out? He's like, I wasn't even supposed to be here.
No, it's literally just like he looks up and gets shot, and this guy robs him, and then it's just Dante's dead on the floor, and then it like goes to credit.
Man, that'd be an all-time GOAT film then. That changes the first one. Like
That would have done it.
it's just like, hey, retail will kill you. Like, get out of it, man. Live your life.
It would have been it would have been a very, very different movie, and like had a very different legacy, I think, as well. But
We would have never gotten the donkey scene. So
no, and we're better for it. I think we're all more comfortable with bestiality now with them.
They didn't go back to that in the third one. They didn't do that.
No, there's lots of things they didn't go back to in the third one.
Such as?
Well, the racist, the slurs, the gay jokes.
Yeah.
There was no bestiality or necrophilia.
It's a lot tamer, yeah, but this one is actually a lot more trimmed back of that transgressiveness, which is weird. I don't know if it's like because this. I guess that's the other thing. This movie has like almost way too much heart. Like having the choice of really being like Dante has just been given a shit hand in life. Becky is dead before, like his wife and child are killed. And a lot of scenes of him like mourning over her and crying. And like, oh, I don't know, you don't expect that from a Clerks movie, and it's not necessarily an indictment. Like parts of it work, but it's a, I don't know.
It's a weird tonal shift.
Yeah, did that work for you guys? That sort of that emotional through line.
Kind of, but it just felt very depressing. And then to have him die as the ending of this movie, like it's kind of tragic and kind of Only like, it feels kind of strange.
Like who is Dante based on? If Silent Bob is Randy, who's his friend? Like what's that trying to say?
If Kevin Smith is Randall.
Yeah. Who's Dante in his life in the making of Clerks and all this sort of stuff? Was there somebody he had? Did he lose somebody, or is it just?
No, I think that so I think that's where it just becomes the fiction. Like I don't think there was ever a Becky in Kevin Smith's real life. I think it's just this is him telling Dante's story more than anything else. And like I have no issue. Like I actually like that the heart is in it. Like it makes it. If this movie was just metatextual jokes, it'd be awful. But having some sort of character growth is like really kind of saves it. It just kind of came out of. I don't know. It's just again, if you can sort of tell, it's like Rosario Dawson was probably too busy and too expensive. And so he's like, I can afford.
She's had a career.
Like that's it. She's making Ashoka, and like she is doing lots of stuff. She's really like she's always working. And he's like, I could probably get you for one day. He's like, all right, I'm just going to have to kill you off then because that sucks, right? Like I think if the movie's different and better if she is in it, even if it's just.
It's a very different movie with him with a kid, though. Like I don't know. It's like it's a different movie, totally different movie.
I think I don't. Yeah, we shouldn't try to rewrite it, but it's just such a bad choice to be like, she died on the way to her home planet.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's pick up where we left off with kind of undoing everything that happened in the second.
That's right. Let's undo any character growth we introduced in Clerks 2.
Yep.
The ending would have been better if it was just Randy in the store on his own and it pans out to him. Not having Dante still standing there next to him, but just as, a ghost standing there, but in physical form with him. I feel like it packs more impact to just have Randy stand there on his own in that store if they're going for like an emotional, sad ending.
I had a similar
Dante standing there like.
I had a similar thought. I'm like, either I agree, just have Randall, or have Randall talking and not have Dante replying.
Yeah.
And I was like, that, because that would have also been kind of powerful, right? Where he's like, he's got no one to talk to now. But he does the worst choice where he has them both there. And Randall looks sad and he's kind of poignant, but it's like, it's like, what are you trying to go for here?
At least have him fade away. He just still stands there for the whole shot. Like, I'll always be here. Hey, I'm not even supposed to be here, but you know.
That would have been funny. Oh, that would have been really good if he's like, why are you here? And he's like, I'm not supposed to be here. Oh, should we make Clerks 3?
Doesn't he do that at the funeral though? Like they already used that line.
I know. It would have been funny though if Dante was literally goes like, "Oh my god, I can't leave this room because this is the room I died in." He's like, "I'm stuck here forever. This is shit. This is hell."
Purgatory is the quick stop.
All right, I think we should make Clerks 4. And we do that.
Kevin Smith, hit us up.
Let's put this series down. It's done.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I don't think there's any room for it to go. The Clerks universe is done, and it should have been done after number 2. I really don't think this movie's necessary, which is a shame. Do you guys have any other things to mention about it?
No. I'm glad I've seen this trilogy. I can tick them off my list now. Don't think I'll ever seek them out again, probably. But
no.
In 5 years, you'll be like, I've got an itching for Clerks 1. I guarantee it.
Maybe. I need some necrophilia in my cinema again.
Yeah, they don't do enough of it.
No.
So, do we all have the same rankings? Is it just 1, 2, 3?
No.
Yeah.
What is
1, 3, 2?
Oh, goodness gracious.
You think 2 is that bad?
2 is not that bad. 2 is, I don't know. I quite like 2. Yeah, especially compared to 3. Holy dooly.
2 is the worst for me. So 1, 3, 2.
Wow.
That's a ranking.
Fucking hate on Lord of the Rings.
It's
some
really
people
just
prefer number 2. Like some people hold it in quite high regard.
Yeah. Star Wars fans.
Maybe.
That scene where they're arguing about Lord of the Rings is when the guy's getting so angry that he's vomits. It's really
feels. I get it, I understand him. Do you reckon him shitting on Lord of the Rings for 10 minutes is his little shot at Weinstein, since Weinstein was involved with Lord of the Rings as well?
Good, but quite possibly. I do think, I think part of it's probably that. And I also think he's just like...
He's a big Star Wars fan.
Yeah, he's like, you nerds, you'll never know the real trilogies of Star Wars, but... Yeah, I don't know. All right, well, look. Yeah, all right, 1 is obviously the best, and the other 2, take it how you will. That's it for Clerks, though. Thank you for joining us on this episode of The Good, the Bad, the Worst. Luke, you're up next. What are we doing?
So, we are going to do a trilogy that its first film focuses on 2 people who aren't very intelligent, that released in 1994, had a...
Dumb and Dumber?
Friday?
Yes! The Dumb and Dumber trilogy. So, the Dumb and Dumber original, the prequel, Dumb and Dumberer, and then the sequel that came out 2 years ago, I believe, Dumb and Dumber 2.
No, it's way more years than that.
It was after COVID, I know that.
No.
Yes, it was, surely.
No, I remember you.
I've never seen it. I haven't seen the new one.
2014, dude.
No way.
Yeah, I remember,
oh my god, I'm old. I'm
store.
so old. Oh my god. Okay. Wow. Yeah. Okay. Well, the Dumb and Dumber trilogy. I haven't watched Dumb and Dumber 2. I think the original is a classic, and I haven't watched it in a very long time. And I have a weird soft spot, as much as I just shit on Clerks 2, for Dumb and Dumberer, the prequel. I found that film very funny when I was a teenager. So
yeah, I've seen that movie.
Yeah, and I think that it's not reviewed very well, but I'm wondering how it holds up, because I thought that film was genuinely funny when I was younger. So underrated.
All right, Dumb and Dumber. Tune in next fortnight then for that. Thank you everyone for joining us. This podcast was brought to you by me and my books, The Taste of Iron and The God Grotesque. I don't have them here, but they're on Amazon. Contact us directly if you want a signed copy. I'll pay you to take a copy. That's how desperate I am to free up the space. So please, if you like this podcast, like, share, and subscribe. Follow us on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your content. It makes a big difference. Really helps us out. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time.
Peace. See you later.